Good morning. I am the blue-haired reader, and it is time once again for our story. This morning we'll be reading The Birth of Comedy. And now, without further ado, The Birth of Comedy. Imagine you're living in prehistoric times, sitting there in your cave talking to your friend. Let's call him Bob. And he's sad because yesterday his father was stomped to death by a woolly mammoth. And earlier that spring, his mother had been devoured by a saber-toothed tiger. You're thinking about how things tend to happen in threes when you spy a large, feral cat sitting at the edge of the firelight. Bob says, "Dinner has arrived." But then, wham, the cat is on his face, scratching at his eyes, and he's screaming. And you have a knee-jerk caveman reaction. Grab your club and beat the cat to death with it. In the process, you strike your now blinded friend Bob 3 or 4 times in the head, and suddenly he stops screaming. Later, you're picking cat meat out of the 10 or 15 teeth you have left with a little cat claw, thinking, "Well, you were right, Bob. Dinner had arrived." You hear a sound. Bob moves a little, pushes himself up, and starts to scream again. So you dangle some cat meat under his nose, and he stops screaming and eats. Bob, usually such a chatty fellow, is not saying a whole lot right now. You can't stand to look at his empty eye sockets, so you get some wood chips and tie them in with what you have at hand. Catgut. The next morning, Bob has soiled his loincloth. You're mildly annoyed, but you take the loincloth and Bob and dip both of them into the river. Then, while you're standing on the bank, drying in the sun, a twig snaps in the forest, and Bob leaps into your arms. You've never held a naked man before. It feels a little weird. The next morning, Bob has soiled himself again, and this perturbs you. You suspect a pattern emerging, so you put Bob on a schedule. One morning you take him out and he doesn't reach for the leaf like he normally would. You say, aren't you forgetting something, Bob? I know you can hear me. I'm not wiping your ass, Bob." And you pick a leaf and hand it to him, and he eats it. But you stick to your guns, and he keeps you up all night scratching his ass. The next day, you hand him a leaf, and he eats it again, so you do what you never imagined you would ever do. And it is now official. You have become Bob's caregiver. You have to take fearful Bob with you everywhere. The two of you start to lose weight because it's hard to sneak up on an animal with an idiot hanging from your loincloth, tripping over logs and crushing pine cones underfoot. And after you've wiped his ass for the billionth time, you think, "I know it's my fault he's like this, but enough is enough." One day you find yourself leading Bob way up near the cliffs, and you don't even remember how you got there. But now you're 20 feet away from the edge and getting closer. And you stop and say, "I have to tie the thong of my sandal, Bob. Why don't you go on ahead? I'll be right with you." Of course, you're barefoot, but Bob doesn't know that. Something makes you grab him before he goes over the edge. You push him gently away from danger, but now you're on the edge. You look down. Far below, clouds float past and birds soar above them. It looks so inviting. You get dizzy and start swaying, a light breeze on your back. But then, just before you go over the edge, you hear a sound you've never heard before. You chuckle, and then start laughing, and suddenly you're doubled over, howling into the abyss. Bob is laughing also. It's apparently contagious. And you give him a big hug, and later, after you get back to the cave, you think, I have to share this with other people. You invite the neighbors over, and they come, a miserable horde with sores on their bodies, missing fingers and toes. They're emaciated, hungry, or starving. They're only going to live to be 25 years old, 30 tops. But while you talk to them, they smile and laugh and look at one another as if for the first time. They are happy, even if only for a short while. And people come from all around to be entertained in your little comedy cave. And they start to bring you things, worthless trinkets made out of sticks that today would fetch $80 million on Antiques Roadshow, which you stupidly burn for kindling. They bring homemade soap and fermented berries and dried meat and dried fruit and dried shrunken heads and large soft leaves treated with oil. And you become a wealthy man by caveman standards. Then one day you wake up and you know this will be the best day of your life. A glorious day, a beautiful day, a magical day. For on this day, you hire a man to wipe Bob's ass.